Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're immersing ourselves in, well, really one of the deepest, most kind of revolutionary texts in Mahāyāna Buddhism, the Saddharma-Puccānika Sutra. You probably know it better as the Lotus Sutra. Now, it's famous for these incredibly powerful stories, these allegories, the 7 parables, they're often called. But we are going straight to what feels like the core. We're diving deep into the parable of the burning house. And believe me, this isn't just some simple story. It's an allegory that was so potent, it fundamentally shifted Buddhist thinking. So our mission today is to really unpack why this story was told. It's not just a moral tale, it's actually a very carefully crafted philosophical argument designed to introduce and frankly defend these huge concepts. Upāya, skillful means, and the really startling idea of the Ekayāna, the one vehicle.
Yeah, and to really feel the impact of the burning house, you have to understand the sheer scale of the crisis it was designed to resolve. This parable, it functions as a kind of apologetic, a grand defense, really, for the Buddha's whole approach to teaching. You see, just before this story pops up in the sutra, the Buddha drops this bombshell on his most advanced students. He reveals that the paths they dedicated their lives to, the path of the Shravaka, the hearer, the Pratyeka Buddha, that solitary realizer, even the Bodhisattva path. He tells them these weren't the final goal after all. They were provisional, kind of like stepping stones.
Wow. I mean, that must have been just devastating, especially for someone like Shariputra, right? One of the top disciples. He thought he'd reached the end goal, final nirvat, and then to be told, essentially, sorry, your understanding was incomplete. The finish line you crossed was just the rest stop. That's a theological shock.
That's exactly the term scholars use, theological shock. Shariputra felt, and the text says this, that he'd basically been cheated out of the chance for Buddhahood, for that limitless knowledge of the Buddha. The clear implication was, well, did the Buddha hold back? Did he intentionally deceive them?
A betrayal, almost.
It could certainly feel that way. So the parable comes in to reframe that completely. It argues that offering these different provisional paths, even when there's ultimately only one true path, isn't a lie. It's actually the highest form of compassionate wisdom. Skillful means in action.
Okay, let's get into the imagery then. The house itself. The description is pretty vivid and frankly terrifying. It's not just on fire. It's specifically called old and decaying. It's got rotten pillars, crumbling walls. It's structurally unsound.
Yes, and that decay is absolutely key. The house is the world of conditioned existence, saṃsāra. Its state of utter disrepair, falling apart. It's a perfect metaphor for the core Buddhist teaching of anicca, impermanence. The world we live in, the reality we perceive, it isn't solid, it isn't stable, it's fundamentally falling apart.
And inside, it gets worse. The text lists this like nightmarish catalog of horrors. Goblins, ogres, poisonous insects, places stinking with excrement. What are these supposed to be? Literal monsters?
Not literal, no. They're incredibly powerful symbols for the internal landscape of our own minds when trapped in suffering. These aren't external demons you fight. They represent the internal afflictions, what Buddhists call the kleshas. Greed, hatred, ignorance, fear, craving, all those mental states. So the house is really a map of our own unexamined consciousness. We're trapped inside by these patterns.
Okay, so if the house is saṃsāra and the monsters are inner demons, then the fire itself.
That's dukkha, suffering. The manifest misery of existence. The sutra is very specific. It even names the flames, the distresses of birth, aging, illness, and death.
The Four Noble Truths, basically, told as a horror story.
Exactly. It's a dramatic retelling, which means the escape isn't just running out the door physically. It's about a profound inner transformation, a complete change of mind and heart.
Which brings us to the main characters, the father and the children.
The father, who's the Buddha, the Tathagata. His immense wealth isn't money, it's his boundless wisdom and compassion, the whole storehouse of the Dharma. And there's a subtle but important point. The text implies the father was inside the house too, initially, before he got out, and shows that the Buddha's nature isn't remote. It's right here within suffering.
And the children, they're us, right? All sentient beings.
Yes, and their defining characteristic is avidya, ignorance, total profound ignorance. They're completely lost in their games and playthings.
Things like chasing pleasure, piling up wealth, seeking fame, all the stuff we think is important.
Exactly. The trivial worldly pursuits. They are completely unaware, unknowing that the flames are licking at their heels.
And this ignorance is what justifies the father's next move, isn't it? Because just shouting fire doesn't work.
It doesn't. He tries direct warnings, but they're too absorbed. They don't grasp the danger. So because truthful direct communication fails, they literally lack the capacity to hear it. He has to resort to a strategy, a skillful lure.
The famous lure. promising toys to get them out. And these toys, these are the triyana, the 3 carts.
That's the allegorical meaning. The 3 provisional paths offer to appeal to different children, different temperaments.
Okay, let's break this down. First, there's the simplest one, the goat cart.
That represents the Ekayāna, the path of the disciple or hearer, aiming for personal liberation, becoming an arhat, a worthy goal, but limited in scope.
Then the second cart.
The deer cart. That symbolizes the pradhyeka buddhayana, the path of the solitary realizer, someone who achieves enlightenment on their own, but doesn't necessarily go on to teach others extensively.
And the third, the grandest of the promised 3, is the bullock cart.
Yes, representing the bodhisattvayana. This is the path of seeking full Buddhahood, not just for oneself, but for the liberation of all beings. It's seen as the most demanding and compassionate path among the 3.
So these 3 carts are the bait, the provisional goals used to motivate the children to just get out of the burning building.
Exactly. And this is where we really define upāya kausalya, skillful means or adapted teachings. It's crucial to understand this isn't just like clever trickery or mere expediency. In Mahāyāna thought, it's seen as an essential, indispensable function of enlightenment itself. It has to be grounded in 2 things: wisdom, praja, and compassion.
So the father uses wisdom to see what makes his kids tick. They only care about toys right now.
And his compassion compels him to act on that insight. Even if it means promising something specific, he won't literally deliver in that form. The value of upāya isn't judged by its literal truthfulness at the moment it's spoken. It's judged by its effectiveness. Does it lead to a positive, salvific result? Does it save them?
Which leads us to the climax of the parable. The children rush outside, saved. Phew. They ask for their goat, deer, and bullock carts.
And they're nowhere to be found.
Instead, what do they get?
Instead, the father gives each of them equally one single, absolutely magnificent vehicle, a great white ox cart. It's described as huge, adorned with jewels, comfortable, way beyond anything they were promised or could have imagined.
And this is the big reveal. The great white ox cart symbolizes the one vehicle, the Ekayāna.
This is it. This is the absolute core message, not just of the parable, but arguably of the entire Lotus Sutra. It's a radical unification. It says those 3 paths, those 3 carts, they weren't actually different destinations. They were just differently paced ways of getting everyone out of the fire, ultimately leading to the same supreme path. All those provisional paths are subsumed into this one ultimate vehicle.
So there's only one true goal in the end.
One true goal. Buddhahood itself, for everyone.
And the father gives this supreme gift to all his children equally, no favorites.
Exactly. He establishes this incredibly inclusive Mahāyāna vision that all sentient beings have Buddha nature within them. Everyone is destined for enlightenment eventually. It's a universal inheritance.
Okay, but we have to address the elephant in the room, or maybe the ox in the cart. The father lied. He made a specific promise about 3 different types of carts, knowing he was going to give them something else entirely. That feels like a deliberate deception. A compassionate one, maybe, but still a deception. How does that square with the fundamental Buddhist precept against false speech? Isn't the Buddha supposed to be the embodiment of truth?
That is the critical ethical question, and the sutra anticipates it. The authors knew this would be a major sticking point, so they actually put the question into the Buddha's mouth, asking Shriputra if the father was guilty of falsehood. And Shriputra provides the defense. It's got 2 main parts.
Okay, what's the first part?
The first is essentially a consequentialist argument. Saving the children's lives, getting them out of the fire of saṃsāra, is such an overwhelmingly positive good that it outweighs the relatively minor negativity of the initial untruth. Plus, the gift they ultimately received, the great white ox cart, was infinitely greater than what was promised. So you could argue the initial promise wasn't so much a lie as an understatement, a necessary stepping stone to a far greater reality. The gift of life itself is the greatest reward.
The end justifies the means, basically, if the end is enlightenment.
In this very specific context, yes. The second part of the defense focuses on motivation. The father didn't lie out of malice or selfishness or because he couldn't deliver. He acted purely from boundless compassion and wisdom, prajnaja. And crucially, he had the capacity, remember his immense wealth, to give the far superior gift. It was a strategic, loving deception born from his ability to provide the ultimate good, not from any limitation.
This is fascinating from an ethical standpoint. We often think of ethics in terms of strict rules, like Kant's idea that you should never lie, no matter the consequences. That's a deontological view.
Correct. And And the Lotus Sutra seems to be pushing back against that kind of absolute rule-based morality. It suggests a more flexible, maybe situational ethic, at least for enlightened beings. Where wisdom and compassion become the ultimate guides, these higher principles can, in extraordinary circumstances focused on salvation, allow for the overriding of a general provisional rule like do not engage in false speech.
But this leads to the idea of paternalism, doesn't it? The sutra seems to be saying that because the children, and by extension all of us unenlightened adults, are so blinded by ignorance, avidya, we're basically like children. The text even suggests we're relevantly similar to the insane because we can't see our own best interests. So the father, the Buddha, is justified in intervening, even deceptively.
That's a fair reading. It is a form of strong paternalism. The justification rests on the Mahāyāna diagnosis of the human condition. Our ignorance and attachments are so deep-seated that they prevent truly rational, long-term decision-making about our spiritual welfare.
Okay, but that raises the inevitable worry, the slippery slope concern. If we, ordinary unenlightened people, start thinking we can use skillful means to justify bending rules or deceiving others, where does that end?
Right. We don't have the Buddha's perfect wisdom or boundless compassion.
It seems like a recipe for hubris or even abuse if we try to wield upāya ourselves.
And the tradition is generally quite clear on that danger. True, perfect upāya is really the domain of fully enlightened Buddhas or very high-level bodhisattvas who possess that flawless insight and are free from self-interest. For the rest of us, attempting it is fraught with peril. It requires a level of wisdom and detachment that most people, frankly, just don't have. The risk of self-deception or manipulation is too high.
Okay, let's broaden the view a bit. How does this parable, the burning house, fit with other famous parables in the Lotus Sutra? Is it part of a larger teaching strategy?
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating to compare it. The burning house addresses an imminent, acute crisis. Danger right now. So the solution is an immediate lure, even if it's slightly illusory at first glance. Now, contrast that with, say, the parable of the prodigal son from chapter 4.
Right, the son who ran away and forgot he was rich.
Exactly. That parable isn't about an immediate fire. It addresses a chronic condition. The son's deep-seated feeling of worthlessness, his forgotten identity as the heir. So the father's upāya there isn't a quick trick. It's a very slow, gradual process of rehabilitation. He gives the son menial work cleaning dung for 20 years, slowly building his confidence and responsibility before finally revealing, son, all this is yours. It requires immense patience.
Different problem, different skillful means.
Precisely. And then you have the parable of the Phantom City in chapter 7. What problem does that address?
That's about the travelers getting tired on a long journey.
Yes, sheer fatigue and doubt. They're journeying to a distant treasure land. But the path is too long, too arduous. They want to give up. So the guide, the Buddha figure, uses his power to conjure up an illusory city in the distance, a phantom city.
Representing the earlier provisional forms of nirvana.
Exactly. He tells them, look, we've arrived, rest here, recover. It's a temporary, illusory goal. Once they're rested and regain their strength and resolve, the guide makes the phantom city vanish and says, okay, the real treasure is just a little further.
So, burning house for immediate danger, prodigal son for low self-worth, phantom city for exhaustion.
It shows the Buddha as this master physician, or maybe a master educator. He diagnoses the specific obstacle, imminent peril, spiritual poverty, lack of endurance. And he prescribes exactly the right medicine, the right upāya for that specific situation. But the underlying goal is always the same, leading everyone to the ultimate perfect health of Buddhahood.
It really underscores that the different paths weren't random, were they? They were tailored.
They were absolutely tailored, purposefully designed for different needs, different capacities, different stages on the journey, all leading towards the one vehicle.
Now let's try to bring this ancient parable right into our world today. The psychology of it feels incredibly modern. The children absorbed in their games, ignoring the flames. I mean, that sounds exactly like denial, distraction, the things we do every day.
It really does. Think about it. We're surrounded by warnings. Climate change, social instability, economic uncertainty, existential risks abound. And yet, so often, we're just absorbed in our phones, our work, our entertainment, our immediate concerns, our games. It's a very accurate description of how humans often cope or fail to cope with large-scale threats.
There are even studies, aren't there, showing people would rather give themselves mild electric shocks than just sit alone with their thoughts for a few minutes.
Yes, that speaks directly to the parable. The internal landscape of the burning house, remember the goblins, the filth? It represents that uncomfortable inner reality, the unexamined mind. It can feel so unpleasant that we prefer any distraction, even a painful one, to confronting what's going on inside. The games seem preferable.
What about the father's approach? He doesn't force them out. He doesn't drag them kicking and screaming.
Which is also very insightful. His approach is non-coercive. He understands their mindset and creates conditions, the promise of something better that allows them to choose to leave.
It feels like a model for good communication, maybe even good therapy. You don't just tell someone they're wrong. You help them foster their own personal direct experience, as the text might imply. Help them see a better alternative they can choose themselves.
And perhaps the most powerful modern resonance is the global crisis metaphor, especially something like climate change. Humanity often seems like those oblivious children, doesn't it? Deeply engrossed in the games of short-term economics, political point scoring, national rivalries.
While the house is, quite literally, burning, getting hotter.
Exactly. And it highlights a huge challenge in risk communication. Just presenting the facts, the urgent scientific warnings, often isn't enough. Like the father shouting fire, it doesn't always translate into motivated action.
People lack the upāya, maybe, the skillful means to connect the abstract danger to their immediate lives and choices.
Or perhaps those communicating the risk lack the skillful means to present it in a way that truly motivates, beyond just fear or denial. The father knew a direct threat wouldn't work on its own. He needed to offer a compelling positive vision, a reward. Maybe what we desperately need today are new kinds of skillful means, new narratives, new incentives, new ways of framing the problem, and the solutions that can actually spur the collective action required.
So after digging through all this, the fire, the decay, the skillful deception, the provisional cards, the ultimate vehicle, what's the final takeaway? What should someone listening right now hold on to from this depth dive?
I think the deepest message is actually one of profound radical hope and inclusivity. The parable, especially the revelation of the great white ox cart, asserts that the ultimate prize, Buddhahood, the Ekayāna, isn't reserved for a select few. It's the universal inheritance. It belongs to all beings. So regardless of where you feel you are right now, whether you feel like you're struggling on a difficult path or maybe feel like you're not on any path at all, that magnificent ultimate vehicle is waiting. It's your birthright, essentially.
And the parable forces you, really compels you to look at the fire, to acknowledge the reality of suffering, of dukkha, the impermanence, the dangers, both in your own mind and in the world. You have to see the urgency. But the most powerful truth it offers might be about your own agency. The father doesn't pull them out, he calls them out. The decision to run, to leave the games behind, is ultimately yours. And maybe the ethical challenge for us, the unenlightened, isn't about perfectly wielding upāya, because we probably can't. Maybe the challenge is simply to accept the urgent need for action, even if we don't fully understand everything outside the house yet. Even if the true nature of the Ekayāna is still a bit mysterious. It's a reminder that sometimes, maybe often, action stepping towards something better has to come before perfect intellectual understanding. The invitation is always there. To have the courage to see the fire, drop the distracting games, and choose to walk through that door.